It's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's our goal. Hey, it's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's also a show.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Breaking Bread with Tom Papa. I'm Tom Papa. Very excited today. This is a great one. It's a great one. You see this beautiful bread around me? You see this beautiful baguette? You see these beautiful boules? Oh my God. All right, so Andy Kadin is the owner, creator of Bub and Grandma's in Los Angeles. If you're eating great bread at great restaurants, there's a very good chance Andy and his team at Bub and Grandma's made it. I discovered him when I started my little bread journey and started baking and starting to pay attention. This was one of the quick names that came up. And he was so nice. He actually helped me out with a pilot for the Food Network. He let me film at his place at two of his separate bakeries. When I needed him, he would always show up. We also did a live event together. And it's so funny when you really love doing something, as I do with baking bread, as he does with baking bread, that you actually just have this shorthand and passion and just can talk. It's like talking to comedians. It's like I can talk comedy day and night with these people. I can talk bread day and night with Andy. Such a successful story. All comes from the heart. It's so great. He's so great. And he's navigating his way through all of this COVID, and actually, despite all of this, is going to be opening a ultimate sandwich shop, which has been his dream since he started this whole thing. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Get some bread, get some butter. I'm going beer today because it's I've just been reading a lot about monks drinking beer and eating bread. So that's where I'm going to go today. I hope Andy likes it. I hope you guys like this. Enjoy Andy Kadin. We haven't seen each other in a bit.
Quite some time.
Yeah.
Yes.
A couple of years? 2 years?
Something like that. Yeah. We were at that festival.
Yeah.
Kabu.
The Kazoo.
Yeah, something like
San
that.
Diego rock, food.
Rocking, two guys
Comedy.
handing bread from a stage down to a large group of people to eat mid-show.
Yeah, we were just passing out all your bread to these people. There was some other food guy before us that was doing like
Way more coordinated show with overhead camera angles and, cooking demos and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was like real Food Network kind of stuff with fire and stuff. And we just rolled up and we're like, this is my favorite bread guy. This is his bread.
We'll just stand here and you guys want to ask us some questions? Here's the show.
Yeah, ours was good though.
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
People seemed to laugh. And
Yeah.
They took the bread, so they trusted us.
Do you have that gear that what you've done and are doing is like really baller. To be supplying all this bread to all of these.
Significantly less now, but what once was a larger distribution was pretty nuts.
Yeah, and I'll come back to that. But
sure.
The is there like the temptation, or do people like approach you like, we can make you like a celebrity out of this stuff. Like we can do
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, and it's my takes all of my restraint to not like explain to them why I don't want this life, or I don't want to be on the Food Network, or I don't want to be in this like Google ad or whatever.
Yeah.
And I try really hard not to do that because doesn't do anything other than like to try and soothe my ego.
Right, and insult them at the same time.
Insult good people who are just trying to do their jobs. Like what's the point of that? But I do have a lot of those feelings from my prior career, which was in advertising for 10 years. No wonder it brewed up a bunch of anger and remorse.
Yeah. what's the biggest thing, or like what's the worst part of that life for you that you feel like you don't have to participate in?
I think that just the whole concept of advertising has skewed so far away from telling people about what the product is and why it's good. It's more like Now it just feels exclusively like emotional manipulation and trying to get people to believe that a Toyota vehicle is like aligned with their lifestyle and who they are as a person, and that's just such horseshit. And it's like it's if you need to try and appeal to people's emotional side to sell your car, then your car is probably a piece of garbage. But the problem is that it works, and because it works, people will keep doing it because it makes them money. Which is like, everything in the world right now. It's just like, if it makes me money, it's the right thing to do. But it's like, no, that's not right.
I mean, don't you remember when we were kids, like a rock band, like doing an ad or something, it was a sellout. And everyone would literally be talking about it at school, like, what did they do?
They ruined it.
I mean, that was a big deal. Now it's the goal.
I mean, it's like the natural course, even for smaller up and coming bands, that it's part of their, business plan that they write, or something that's part of being a band. It's not about expression anymore, or just about, getting what you've got inside out. It's about some like career path and all this bullshit that basically negates it as art. It's not art anymore.
Exactly. So that seems pretty natural that bread baking is kind of the antithesis of that.
It's funny because it wasn't really intended,
No, but it is a thing. Like, I mean, there is such a basic thing to this.
Even though the I'm sure we'll talk about this, but even though the creation of the bakery was sort of an accident or not intentional, because I wanted to open a sandwich shop, that was the point of baking in the first place, was just to figure out how bread worked. The fact that bread stuck has to mean something. Like, I'm comfortable doing it. I'm comfortable selling this thing that is pretty pure and pretty old. And it's stuck around for thousands of years. So there's something to that.
100%.
It's a catharsis for sure.
I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but I decided to break out beer today. A lot of times I drink wine when we're here. But I'm reading a book, Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. It's about building a cathedral, and it's all about monks. And they, in every page, it's bread and beer. So I'm like, I'm gonna bring Andy some beer.
That's perfect. I love bread with that.
And these are some of your breads, which are just amazing.
Oh, thanks.
So, I mean, the best breads. So, okay, so let's do this proper. You were born where in New Jersey?
Millburn, New Jersey. Well, technically
Millburn.
in Summit, New Jersey.
Summit. Okay, cool. I have family around there too.
Oh, nice.
I was Jersey born and bred.
Oh, nice.
And bread. And so you started advertising on the East Coast, or when you were out here?
Yeah, in New York. I went to college in Maine,
right?
At Bates College, which is like high school too. It was like 1,400 people,
right?
Which is a mistake, but
was it a mistake?
It was an interesting experience. I'm glad I had it. It was not traditional. But immediately went to the city after that, which was what I was waiting for all of high school, was to get to the city. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to Maine for 4 years.
Because in Jersey, you're under
so
the
close.
Shadow of New York.
And I hated suburban lifestyle. And like, I just wanted, I lived walking distance to the train station. So all me and my friends would do once we were allowed to go do it was to just go into the city and walk around and try and get beer. And like,
go to arcades.
Go to McDougal Street and get a fake ID, go get it taken at a bar around the corner, and then go buy another one, and then do it again at a different bar. And once I got to New York, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was into music. I was into film. I thought maybe I'd go to film school, writing was also around, and I was doing newspaper in college, and I just couldn't figure out what to focus on. Which I feel like is a pretty commmen, and then
especially from a small liberal arts school.
They didn't really guide me in any direction. I was a philosophy major, which didn't help. So when I got to New York, it was just sort of like a figure it out period, and I did a lot of different kinds of jobs.
You were living in the city at the time?
I was living in Brooklyn. I was living in Greenpoint. And this is like 2003 or 2004.
Right. So before it was cool.
Yeah, when it was still, I could still pay $400 a month for my own room in an apartment. Amazing. Which was ridiculous. It was still pretty cheap at that point. But Yeah, and I was bartending. I was working in restaurants.
Yeah.
I worked for Marty Markowitz at the Brooklyn at Borough Hall. Like he's basically a Brooklyn Borough President's office, and I was doing like photography for them and like weird. They let me put on a Battle of the Bands there. It's like just I don't know what that job was or what they were paying me for, but I went there every day. And then I got this job working for a guy who, in retrospect, would be someone who I would really despise now. Who basically was doing a 12-city, like the creativity and advertising kind of speaking tour. And it just was a job, and I was like the assistant. And I set up the projector and got his PowerPoint queued up, and like high-fived him when he walked down the aisle and all this shit. And he would go to like all of the advertising agencies, and we went to like a couple different cities around the country. So it was cool. It was like a cool job that paid me a very small amount of money, but I got to go fly to different cities.
Yeah, very cool.
And when that was done, I was like, these guys are like kind of combining all the things that I'm interested in, like music, film, art, like writing. So I decided that's what I was going to focus on, trying to get a job in as a writer in an advertising agency.
Oh, very cool.
And then most people go to grad school for that, but I just kind of figured out how to wriggle my way into a place.
It's seductive advertising.
It is.
Especially if you're creative and need to make money.
Yeah.
There's like, well, it's enough cool there that I can go do it.
Yeah, and you're like on set. You get to go to, post houses. You get free lunches. What like it's like what else do you want from a corporate job?
Yeah.
They've got Einstein quotes painted on the wall so you can be inspired.
Right.
It's really incredible.
I remember I went and interviewed for at an advertising agency when I was still in college. I drove in from New Jersey, and I went to Ryder down by Princeton.
Sure.
And I always say it's your school's not that great when it's like the description is down the road from
next
Princeton.
to another school, adjacent to the more notable name.
Yeah. But it was great. But I went in and I drove all the way up in my little suit and went to an ad agency and sat there and was interviewed by a pretty belligerent guy in his little tiny office.
Oh yeah.
And he's in there with the suspenders, and he's just kind of like swollen, like being so chubby, and he's kind of being snotty to me, like, "Well, what do you want to do? And is it going to be account or creative?" And I was just like, in the middle of the interview, and part of it's college arrogance, because I was probably a junior or senior. I was like, I was nervous going in, and I'm like, why would I be nervous? Like, I don't want to get the job that makes me this guy.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That was the whole revelation when I was there. Was like these guys who were in their early 50s who were like freelancing at the agents in LA when I was still working in advertising, right when I moved here. And they're these guys who are significantly older and like second divorce and just fucking miserable and making tons of money.
And the money means nothing.
Nothing. They're just lonely and sad, and every weekend they're at the office and like, for what am I doing this for?
Right. Why am I following this path?
This is horrible. And it's not art, and it's not any of the things that I thought it was going to be. It was just the same commercial garbage that, I saw on TV.
So how many years were you in
10.
it? In 10.
Yeah. It was a hard world to extract myself from once I was in it.
Because you're getting paid.
And getting paid a lot.
Yeah.
And like, it was going well. Like, I was a creative director at the end. Like, it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it was like going in the right direction, and I would have made a lot more money had I stuck around. And when I decided that I was going to bail, a lot of people were like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Like, and it just took a long time to...
How did you come to that? Like at the end when you're like about to make that decision, was it pretty gut-wrenching?
It was literally gut-wrenching because I'm an anxious person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of who I am, but I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know what was happening to me when I was like starting to not sleep well and have tightness in my chest and like go walk into work and 20 minutes later feel like I can't breathe and I got to go walk around the block. That's what started happening because I just kept ignoring the truth. I kept ignoring that, like, I hate this every moment of every day. I'm embarrassed to be this person. And I just... like it became something that I couldn't ignore anymore. And then it was really the long drawn out question of like, okay, I know I can't do this. We're do I go?
Right. Did you have someone to talk to at that time?
Yeah, that was when I first started talking to a therapist.
Yeah,
which was huge.
Yeah, it helped.
I never thought to consider that. It was just never.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I was like 20, 25, 26 at that point, I still had the really stupid, closed-minded idea that there had to be something wrong with me to go see a therapist, and that's for people who have problems. And it's like, yeah, every fucking person is full of problems. It's the defining characteristic of humanity.
That's right, exactly.
So that like kind of made the decision for me. But getting out was like, I still needed to make money to live.
Yeah.
And I couldn't just be like, I'm opening a restaurant now. Like that just doesn't work.
No.
I didn't have that kind of money to just be like, oh, I have the money to do it. I'm going to do it myself.
Are you baking at this point?
I had just I quit my full-time job on that job where I needed to walk around the block on just a day when I walked in and was like, guys, I can't do this anymore. I have no plan.
Did you surprise yourself?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I knew that it was coming. I had no plan yet, but I was like, I can't. I've got some money in my savings. It'll get me through the next 3 months.
Yeah.
I'm out. See ya.
What a day.
Yeah.
Oh, walking out of that building must have been.
I very clearly remember the relief.
Yeah.
It was physical.
Yeah, sure. You flowed out of that office.
Yeah. Oh my God. But at the same time, we're opening a sandwich shop, and some of those people who I'm still really good friends with, who I worked with, still work there and are happy, and I can't blame them for that either. It's just different for different people.
Right. What do you mean you were opening a sandwich shop?
Oh, I'm opening a sandwich shop.
Oh, you mean now?
Now.
Oh, I thought you meant then.
No.
I'm like,
well, that was the goal. Was in trying to figure out where to go. I was like, okay, the natural pivot from here is to start writing for TV.
Right.
So I started. And short stories and short Jack Handy-esque kind of comedy New Yorker-y things.
Yeah.
And I started doing that, and I got one published in McSweeney's and felt really good about it, and then kind of lost my interest in doing it anymore.
Yeah.
But I started writing on it for some sort of smaller TV stuff and Funny or Die stuff.
Right.
And it just kind of felt the same. Like it kind of just felt like...
different office.
Yeah, it kind of just felt like different office, and it was all kind of going in the same direction. Like it was all things that I really liked were, stuck in a room with 12 people who would change them all the time. Not that they didn't change them for the better often, but it was still just not satisfying. It wasn't coming from me.
Yeah, not you.
And I wrote a couple scripts and did that kind of stuff and had meetings. And, all of that, which was just rough, as I'm sure you're familiar with. It's just those meetings are like you guys were just talking about. It's like production is tough.
It's hard,
and emotionally crushing at times.
Yeah, uncertain and compromising and
totally.
Yeah, well, and when you're a sensitive person, which a lot of artists and writers are, that could be you can really
catastrophic. Yeah, I'm sure for some.
Yeah. So are you starting to bake yet? Have you?
Yeah, so that was so as I was doing that and realizing that it wasn't going to be the rescue that I hoped it was, where I could just kind of sort of keep doing what I was already doing. Like it's sort of the same system where you sit down, you think up ideas, and then you write them on paper and you tell people about them.
Right.
And it wasn't satisfying. So I started freelancing and just getting gigs where I would, lose my life for 2 weeks, a month on the job. And then was just experimenting. I started writing business plans for a grocery store that had sandwiches. As I saw a building in my neighborhood where I still live, I was like, that's going to be the building, and it's going to be there. Meanwhile, it's not for sale, and I don't know who owns it. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
So as part of these business plans, I just didn't want to be and this is totally countering my 10 years prior. I was like, I just didn't want to come in and be fake. I knew that if I had the money and raised it, I could open a restaurant. But why would anybody want to listen to me? I have never worked anywhere. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I just started doing as much as I could. I started working in restaurants for free that would take me. And then, cranking these business plans down to what mattered most, which turned out to just be sandwiches.
Right.
There's so few great sandwiches in Los Angeles, which is so insane as a New Jersey boy. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I know. You drive. How many times you drive around and you're like, you're hungry and you got somewhere else you got to be, and you're like, I just need a quick sandwich.
Let me just roll into a place, and I'm sure I could get something fine, like anywhere in New York City, and it's not.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't work.
There's like 5 of them.
Yeah, 5, something like that.
And they're spread around this huge area.
Langer's is one of the best places in the world, but it's just one place. There's not like a lot of them. So you know, it felt like something that was needed.
Yep.
And I started writing it and you know, trying to find a little bit of money and looking at places to potentially rent with no idea how that works. And I'm really glad that it didn't work, because I would have failed really quickly.
Right.
And in that process started baking bread, because if I'm doing a sandwich shop, I'm maybe not gonna bake all the bread in the restaurant, but I want to know how it works, and I want to know how to talk about it.
Oh.
So I committed at that point to baking every day. Like, I was just like, okay, if this is, from what I've read about bread, if you're not doing it regularly, you can't really learn anything from it. If you're not at least doing it every weekend, it's hard to know what to change to make it better.
Yeah.
So I just did it every day.
Wow. So who was your first? What was your first? Was it Tartine? Was it?
Honestly, it was
books.
It was Sullivan. So it was just the, you know, no need out of the gates, easiest New York Times recipe, kind of figuring out how it works. That's a yeasted bread, and then kind of figuring out how sourdough works after that. Right.
So you didn't have anyone in your life that knew anything about it or introduced you or anything. It was just curiosity. If great sandwich is great bread.
Yeah, gotta be. So key.
Right.
And it also was just kind of like, okay, so I've traveled around LA trying to find the good places, and a lot of them are really close, but the thing that makes them suck is that the bread is garbage. So if the bread is garbage at all of the notable sandwich shops in Los Angeles, there may not be a person there waiting who's making the good bread already, you know? So maybe I'm gonna have to do this myself.
Right.
So that was
such
the logic.
I take such Jersey pride in this story. Really, because Jersey,
it hurts.
There's a great sandwich on every corner.
So easy.
And there's great bread everywhere. And it's
run by great people with great stories and
and then we're out here in the wild, and it's like amazing tacos.
Oh, unbelievable. Very thankful for that, because that wasn't part of, you know, New Jersey existence.
No, exactly. That was our education, was all that part of it. But man, being out here, like, thinking like,
what happened?
Oh my God! Right, exactly.
Because I know that everybody wants it, also just because it's a very transplant-oriented spot. Like, there's tons of people from the East Coast here that are like, "Where are all the sandwiches?" And no one's, or not a lot of people have like rectified that.
Yeah.
So still feels like 10 years later there's a market gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you start off doing the no-knead bread, which kind of like popped. Like the New York Times put those articles out, and it was like...
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah. Everybody was kind of getting into it.
Yeah, Bittman, I think. That was a Mark Bittman thing.
Right, yeah. And did you get into it pretty quickly? Because...
Yeah. I mean, it's just sort of my nature. Like, this could have been woodworking or like anything that I'm just like, you know, you know, I can design a path for my future from. I'm just going to be like, okay, this is the thing. I've got to do it, and I've got to do it right.
Yeah.
So it just was full on. And I remember, you know, going to BBH or BBD or whatever, one of them, you know, I would wake up at 4 a.m. I would bake the bread, and then I would look at, you know, I would analyze how it worked, and then go into the agency to work for the day and give everybody all the bread. And that's kind of what was the system for a while, until, you know, I was getting really close to a lease with this really crappy space near my house for the sandwich shop. And it would have been a disaster, because I was signing like a 1-year lease with a 1-year option, which is like, you know, basically after the first year, they can raise the rent as much as they want. They would have just killed me.
Killed you.
You want long leases for restaurant spaces.
Right. Especially if you're successful.
Yeah. Or
this guy's making money.
Yeah, or you won't be really quickly.
Yeah.
So that fell through in the same week that deal fell through, and I was heartbroken and crushed, and I'm, you know, just shows you that sometimes when you're heartbroken and crushed, it's like it's a good thing.
Yeah, a little lesson, a little gift.
There's a restaurant in Atwater Village in LA called Dune. That's like a sort of Persian, Middle Eastern style falafel place that also does some sandwiches. And my friend worked there, and I was hemorrhaging bread, so I just gave bread to all of my friends all the time. And it was actually this ciabatta that he gave to the owner and was like, "This is better than the stuff we're getting. You should use this." And he called me out of the blue and was just like, "Hey, I need like 25 small ciabatta sandwich rolls a day. Can you do that?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, well, I'm opening a restaurant, but I guess I could do this, to hone my chops and like get us to a position where, maybe we're doing some wholesale out of the sandwich shop, but also baking bread, and this helps me to practice.
But at the time, you're baking this bread at home.
Yeah,
this is in your.
It was a nightmare.
An apartment, a house.
Yeah, house, small, tiny, 500 square foot house.
With a little oven.
Yeah, like a crappy Hot Point Home Depot oven. It turned out to be great.
Yeah.
As good as one could be. It doesn't break, but. For ciabatta, it's not like I can bake it in a cast iron pot like you would for a sourdough or a boule.
Yeah.
You have to bake it out in the open, which means I had to like kit out the whole oven and like set up 2 racks and covered them with ceramic tiles and had 2 12-inch cast iron pans on the ground with truck chains in them that I would pour boiling water on while I had
steam.
Yeah, and I would scald my arm all the time. And at one time I started spraying the tiles down just to get some more steam from underneath, and I sprayed the light bulb and it exploded all over the bread and all over myself, and was like really gnarly, and I had to use a potato to get the light bulb out, and like all this. It's just endless issues.
And how long had you been baking the ciabatta at this point? Like
still very new. Like it was, the shapes were like all over the place, and like I still didn't really know. I was just sort of following a recipe at that point. I hadn't even like made it my own that much yet. I definitely put in like 20% whole grain flour, which the recipe doesn't have, which has to change the hydration and all that stuff. But it was,
like
it was still very new. Oh no, like 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, just
3
very
months?
new.
Holy cow! You really did dive in.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're doing that to the oven at 3 months.
Oh yeah,
like
it's full on.
You're full on.
Yeah. It was total. I mean, it's basically the way it's been for the last 6 years that we've done this. Where I'm just in the fire.
Right.
I'm just in the fire dancing, like trying to get this shit to work. And there's catastrophes every other day. It's ridiculous. Anyone who owns a restaurant or, especially a bakery, it's just ridiculous.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I don't want to jump the story, but when I was talking with Ken Forkish up in Portland, and he was describing it too, and it's like that you get into it because of the baking, but then you're also a plumber. You're also a guy that fixes ovens.
Everything.
You're also a manager of people.
Yeah, you're a psychiatrist.
Right. You're like tons of other jobs that you're not even thinking about when you're making your first ciabatta.
I wasn't thinking about anything. It's like I just like, oh, this bread is good. I'm going to keep making it. Like that was the extent. And now it's just like this monstrosity.
So when you first start baking it and you were 3 months in, I mean, because I did the same thing where I just got hooked on it. Like second loaf, what did that do to you? Like when you first, and was it the ciabatta or was it the boule?
Honestly, the first bread that I was working on intently after doing some no-knead stuff out of the gates and graduating to Forkish, flour, water, salt, yeast, and then eventually tartine, I was just working on this, which there isn't like. Doing ciabatta properly requires equipment that no home kitchen has. Like you need couche, which is like this linen cloth, and you need a transfer peel, and you need all this other stuff that makes it much more complicated than the way that we've hacked together making sourdough bread at home.
Right.
With the cast iron pot and like all that stuff, which is really successful. It works really well. Ciabatta is a whole other nightmare.
But it's also the sandwich bread.
Oh, it's so good. It's so fluffy and light inside, and you can kind of tailor the crust to how long you bake it. And it's also it's a yeasted bread, so it's very, forgiving if you fuck up. And,
right.
I loved it, and I thought that's what we would do. I was trying to initially to do it where I could make it work without the flour on top, because I hate when you bite into a sandwich and there's flour on the exterior of the bread and it like numbs your lip.
Right.
So I was trying to like be an innovator 3 months into bread baking at all to like figure out how to do it without the flour, but never got there and had to do it traditionally, and it's still.
Why does the flour end up on it? Because when you're transferring it,
it proofs upside down. So it's proofing in this linen cloth that you then flip over onto a board and then slide it into the oven. So when it's upside down, you need to put basically the linen cloth is just filled holding flour, so nothing sticks to it.
Right.
But you can still manipulate what's on top of it so it won't stick. So this is the flour from the couche.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh man, the transfers. Whenever you say transfer, I just get so nervous because it's like, really, because like it's so like I've gotten really good at like like I put it in the refrigerator so it gets a little harder and easier to manipulate drop into the Dutch oven.
Oh yeah,
and Forkish has one recipe where it's like with Polish, and it's an hour of proofing at the end, and then you just put it right in the Dutch oven. It's like it's so like forget
it's hard.
So any kind of like moving it from the thing to the thing, it's not. It's where you panic.
Yeah, I mean, and it's where you drop it on the floor. Like which happens so many times, all the time.
Yeah,
baguettes too are the same way.
Oh God, the baguettes. Did you? So I want to get to the baguettes because that's been the bane of my existence.
Oh,
but
it's so impossible.
Impossible.
Yeah.
So your buddy says, okay, so if you can get me these rolls.
Yeah. And the boss called me out of the blue. His name's Scott, one of the nicest people in the universe, and remains our account today. And when he asked me, I was just excited that someone liked my stuff. I didn't really think about it that much.
Yeah.
And Jed, my friend who connected us, didn't really let me know that this was a possibility. I just got the call. So I just said yes, and I didn't realize that that's like the end of my life because it's
literally the end of your life.
7 days a week.
Yeah. You need the bread.
It never stops.
Right.
And I have to be on time. I can't be late. And it's just me. There's no one to help me. I have to be there.
And what time's delivery?
So I think, if I remember, I would wake up at 4. I remember that, which in looking at things now is late. It's
like sleeping in.
Yeah. Right. Although not that I'm on the floor anymore, but So I would wake up at 4. I would, I basically for ciabatta, it's bulk retarded. So I would mix the dough the day before, and leave it in the fridge for 24 hours, basically. Yeah. Or it's more like 18 hours, and then flip it out onto my, it's this big. This is my work surface, is like 2 feet by 3 feet, and divide it into shapes, and then let it proof in the couche for like, I think it was 2 hours at that point, which was nice because then you can make breakfast.
Right.
The luxuries of early bread bakeries where you had breaks.
Yeah.
And then would bake it directly on the ceramic tiles that I bought from Home Depot and put in the oven. Pour the steam in, close it up, bake for 20 minutes, and then shower, get ready to go to work, pack up my bag, and then drive in a bus tub, drive the bread over to Dune, pick up a coffee from across the street or next door, and then drive to the studio and work for like 12 hours.
Oh my God.
It was very gnarly.
And at the time, I mean, how many rolls?
It was like 20, 25, something like that.
So 25. Yeah. So what do you, $50?
No, like $30.
$30. That's so much work.
Yeah, it was so much work. It was insane. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's just the thing about our bakery and the growth of our bakery that's been so insane is that most people would be like, I'm going to open a bakery. I'm going to raise $500,000 and I'm going to put it in a building and we're going to start from there.
Right.
Or it's like, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Right.
So I just kind of had to, force it through these, and luckily I had a job. So I could, fund my project, which was losing money. It wasn't losing money. It was making money, but it was making $30 a day.
Yeah.
It's not enough to cover everything.
No.
It's not enough to cover my electric bill in my house for the month. It doesn't make any sense.
And you haven't even factored in all of the stuff you did to the oven.
Oh, yeah.
And the supplies. And
crazy. I hadn't written a business plan for a bakery at that point. It just wasn't in the cards.
You're just doing it.
This is fine. I'll just get some reps before I open in like 3 months. And it just totally changed course after that.
God. So where are you getting your flour at this point?
At that point, there were a couple different ways to do it. I was buying Central Milling ABC from there was LA Bread Bakers, which was like a kind of like a meetup group or something like that. And then once a month they had a thing where you could order 50-pound bags from Central Milling. They would drop it off there and you go pick it up.
Okay.
So that was really helpful at the beginning because there's nowhere to get, I would have to go to the supermarket and buy like 40 5-pound bags of King Arthur, which was not efficient.
Yeah.
So I did do that for a while until I figured this out. And then I was using that for a while for all the white flour. And then always out of the gates, Grist and Toll was who I used for all of the whole grain flour.
Man, I have not been over. I've never been to Grist and Toll.
Oh yeah,
and everybody like that I love and respect is like Grist and Toll. Yeah, I just get from Central Milling and get it sent in. and I've gone down to Justo.
Yep.
But I've never been to Gristenthal.
Yeah, Gristenthal is pretty fantastic, and basically set the tone for who we were as a bread bakery out of the gates, because Nan Kohler is the owner. Is not only a huge proponent of like smarter food systems, like smaller agricultural relationships between farmer miller baker, but also just like understands quality and would not stand if the quality was any less than her expectations, and we were the beneficiaries of how seriously she took all of this.
Right. So, where does she start? Like, where does that start? Where, like,
for her,
that was not because that was not a common thing. Like that we needed to think that deeply about the ingredients and that they came from this region and that this is what we're going to.
Sure.
Like where does that?
I mean, I think it all started, maybe in the last 10 years. I mean, I'm sure it was, Alice Waters and like all that kind of stuff has been around, but it really it hit the mainstream relatively recently, like the last 15 years, I would say.
Yeah. That people figured out like maybe that how you could make a business out of it. Like it.
Yeah. I mean, it unfortunately just means you have to have a premium product, which I don't think that you should have to, because if you're buying that stuff from Nan or from even from Central Milling, it's a premium flour. You have to pay more for it because it's being done at a smaller scale, which seems to like be sort of counterintuitive, but it's something that's breaking right now.
Right.
Like, it's slow because the powerful people want to keep things as they are so they can continue making money.
Right.
But the smaller, more localized food systems are the ones that are being employed by all of the best restaurants and all the best food businesses now.
Yeah.
And I think the giant corporations are realizing that they may be in trouble over time. And they are certainly in trouble over time because their product is significantly less. It's just crappier.
It's just not as good.
It's just not as good.
It's literally
not made
not
with caring.
good.
It's made by machines, and that will always produce something that, if you feel the hand of the person who makes the product, from the bread to the farmer to the miller and that's just in the bread world.
Yeah,
it makes it better. You may not even notice it, but you can taste it, you can feel it, like it's in there.
Yeah.
I think it's getting the train is rolling a little bit faster now for reconnecting these relationships that existed for thousands of years prior to America and money and just like.
Well, that's the thing. It's the way that it was always done.
Yeah.
And then they kind of hijacked
everything.
Yeah, and it's not only just the system. It was like that. I think was one of the things that turned me on about baking my own bread in the beginning. Was like, oh, I haven't really eaten real bread in my life.
Period. Yeah. I mean, it's true. I didn't know.
I thought I was doing the right thing by buying the cool the thing with the label that looked kind of country on it and stuff. And I was like, I thought I was doing it.
It's like, these guys are unique. It's got religious stuff on the or whatever, Ezekiel or Dave's Killer Bread or all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, those are made by gigantic corporations that are trying to make you think that it's a small bakery, yet it's able to sit on a grocery store shelf for 2 weeks without turning green and no one bats an eye.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it's really clear that it goes back to the same distaste that you had for being sold so that stuff in advertising.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the same thing.
It's the exact same thing.
That falseness.
Yeah, it's why when growing a business now, I don't know how, I guess it's large to me.
Yeah.
It's just becomes all the more important to not, it's just so easy for companies to hide things or just not talk about them or refuse to. It's the same thing with politics too. It's just like all dodging and all tactical.
Yeah.
If you have to do that at all in your life in any way, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
And that is wrong.
Yeah.
I think.
Right.
For both for yourself and for the people that you're lying to.
Right.
And that's America. And now the world, and that's so gross.
It is, and there's this kind of natural rebellion against it, and what was seen as kind of like hippie, alt, weirdo, precious, which was always kind of there, but it was only like at Grateful Dead shows or something. Like it was, you know,
someone's
what I mean?
handing out something in the parking lot. And they got a little flyer.
It was like, oh, they were little weirdos.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of like settling in, and I guess, I mean, I would like to think that it's because people are sensing the falseness and see it as a new way,
so.
but there's got to be also a business component where people feel like they can make money and have a business that's going to feed them.
Yeah, I mean,
like the practicality of that has to exist.
Yeah, you can see it bleeding over into the other side too, where the giant corporations are buying up smaller businesses to try and appear as though they are that way, are thinking that way now, but it's really just a strategy for mitigating the loss of business for their big brands.
It's like beer, like
oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, all of they had this microbrew revolution in the States.
Yeah.
And now you're like, every time you pick one up, you're like, is this really a guy in Vermont,
or is this InBev or whatever?
Yeah.
It's it's disgusting.
Yeah, it is.
It's disgusting.
I know. But then you find, but you're in it and you're creating it, and at that level, and you're just cranking out this stuff. And
even at that level, where it was just 25 of these little square, like 4x4, ciabatta rolls. It was just the fact that someone liked that pure thing that I was making was 1,000 times more rewarding than any like spot that I made that won an award or any promotion or any raise or any. It's just like $30 a day for this thing that I made with my hands that someone's interested in.
Yeah,
it was just like changed everything.
That's amazing.
Started to unravel all of my questions about myself and who I was. At that point.
Right. So how quickly do you go from? Did they start asking for more?
No, they're still getting the same amount, which is incredible. Yeah,
I
mean, it's like 28 a day, plus they get sourdough loaves and focaccia and other stuff that we now make. But at that point, I was just making ciabatta.
Wow.
And I think that the thing that kind of changed everything, which is why I'm endlessly thankful, for Scott and who owns Dune and just how kind he's always been.
Yeah,
is that he wasn't doing this for the previous baker he was using, and doesn't do it for other companies. I think he does for some, but for some odd reason took it upon himself to, their menu is written when you walk in on a mirror to your left. And they just wrote Bub and Grandma's Ciabatta. They sold it on its own. It was on this beet sandwich that they make that was really delicious, and a couple other things. And they wrote our name, which I came up with on the phone with him.
Oh, really?
Not in figuring it out session, just in like, I got to come up with a name for this. How about my two grandmas? They have nothing to do with my food interest, but they are good people who have contributed to who I am and what I believe. And that's it just came up on the fly. But he wrote it on the mirror, and then when people were like, "This bread is great," they would ask him where they could get it, and there was nowhere to get it. And
it's Bub and Grandma, but we're the only customer.
Yeah, so it's a mysterious kind of thing. Yeah,
that's the coolest.
So it wasn't something I would ever think to do myself and be like, "Hey, could you put our name in your menu? It would really help us out." That's a really gross thing to ask, but he just did it.
The other cool thing, which could be a move, which you do see people do, is they create the illusion like it's hard to get, right? Like that's a marketing thing
100%.
Of like, no, there's a line, and because only 10 people are getting these burgers.
Right. The convenient part is that it
just happened.
It was hard to get because I couldn't do anymore. It was hard.
I got to get to work.
It's not because it's like some special thing. It's just because it's a guy who's got a job. Like he's just got to go do it. Yeah.
And a little oven.
Yeah. So I think at that time, even while we were selling that, I realized like, okay, even if I still am going to open a sandwich shop, like I've got this thing that's happening now. I need to save like every dollar that I make. Because not only am I like, have no time to live because I'm baking in the morning and working till 11 and then coming home and sleeping for 3 hours.
Right.
There's something like either the sandwich shop or something else, a bakery or whatever could be in the cards, and I need to be prepared to do that myself.
Right. So I got kind of serious about it at that point, and even when I was just doing 30 of these little tiny loaves, it became clear that there's a business in this. Like this is people are interested. I'm getting some emails here and there, and I started doing bread for a couple places. I can't remember who came next. It was like Cafe Stella or something like that in Silver Lake. And Wax Paper was pretty early, which is one of the few good sandwich shops in LA, which is in Frogtown now, like a couple blocks from where our bakery is. Oh yeah. I've never been.
Oh, it's a good spot. Yeah, really good. And the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life run that place. Peter and Lauren, incredible humans. But yeah, it started getting real. And once I got beyond 30, I was like, I'm doing 4 bakes every morning because I could only fit like 16 in the oven.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is not sustainable.
4 bakes at what, like 20 minutes
25
each?
minutes, something like that.
Right,
I didn't have room to put the bread anywhere after it came out. My house is just really, really tiny. It's the same house I live in now.
Were you living alone?
At that point, no, I was not. I was not. But then shortly thereafter, yes, I was. Such are the ups and downs of the bread bakery business.
Yeah. It is a funny thing how it starts to slowly take over the house. All of a sudden, there's like just big things of flour and all your equipment and
almost immediately
all your bins and
it's like you're a kitchen. You're like a professional kitchen in the midst of other people's stuff.
You're right.
Yeah, it's not.
Who didn't sign up for this?
Luckily, that wasn't the thing that ended that relationship, but it was it was definitely a stressful time as it's been since. Because of the lifestyle.
So at what point do you realize I can't do this at home?
Yeah, very, very quickly, like probably within another 2 months or something like that. Because I was doing Stella, and I think I was doing maybe wax paper or something else at that point.
Wow.
And there was a pizza place in Highland Park that a couple of friends of mine had opened called Town Pizza. It's still there on York, and they were only open at night. So I would mix the dough at my house, which is 100 steps up from the road.
Right.
And then carry bins of dough up and down my steps to the car, drive the dough up to Town Pizza, shape it there, bake it there in a dry as fuck pizza oven, which has no moisture and is terrible for everything other than pizza. And would like try and figure out ways to engineer steam in there. It was just a nightmare, but I could do more. It was fine. It was servable. It wasn't perfect.
Right.
And
they were friends of yours? They'd let you come in there?
Because they didn't even charge me any money.
Oh, wow.
It was just like the nicest thing that anybody could do.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was making bread and I would just leave them there and leave them bread, and that was my payment for their space. But it only lasted like 2 months or 3 months. And
what only lasted then?
My tenure there. Like I had to find more space.
Yeah.
And at that time I had been in contact with Zach Hall from Clark Street. I don't know if you've ever met him before.
I haven't met him.
Nice guy. And he was like probably a year and a half ahead of me in terms of growth and all that stuff at that point. And he had a space in Grand Central Market where he was selling his bread.
Right.
And was in the process of moving his bakery out of Grand Central Market while still, selling retail there. So he didn't need to use his oven and mixer in the tiny space in Grand Central Market. So I rented the space from him and used his mixer and steam injection oven for the first time, which was revolutionary.
Oh man, that must have been so great.
It was like the greatest feeling in the world because it just immediately improves your bread and makes it look amazing.
Yeah,
it's a whole other universe.
There's just so far you can go without that.
Yeah, I mean, you can do Maurizio and make your bread incredible, and just doing it at home with what you've got,
right?
And still produce beautiful things. But if you want to go to that next level, it's got to involve a professional oven.
Yeah,
and I was like really excited to use that. So I was only there also for like 2 or 3 months, and then it was just getting realer and realer. Like I think at that point I probably had 5 or 6 accounts and was making, like $1,000 a month or like something like that. And it was going well. And I kind of got to the point where I was still freelancing. I was still doing gigs here and there, but was focusing more and more on growing the bread business. And it became apparent that I think this is the business. I think this at that point was when I was like, this is working. Right. People want this. I don't know why, but people are really interested in this. I'm just going to go with it. Let's try. And then when I get to the other side of this, when I can breathe again, I'll open the shop and we'll have bread ready to go. And, and it didn't happen like that. But
still thinking about the sandwich shop.
Yeah. Since then, always.
Always.
So at a certain point, it was awkward just by nature because I'm making my bread behind him, like 4 feet behind him, while he's selling his bread in front. Yeah, that
is weird.
And he's like aiding a competitor, which was very nice of him to do in the first place. And it turned out, like we are still competitors. Yeah, if you want to call it that. But
but I mean, he's got a really good reputation. Yeah, supplies a lot of bread.
Yeah. But it's like the Lodge and us and Clark Street are kind of the second wave LA kind of bread bakeries. And now there's other ones coming up too that are cool. Right. but it's like it was very generous of him to not only do that, but also to help me figure out what I was doing at times. Because I didn't know how any of that equipment worked or how to adjust things, or so he was very helpful in that limited time that I was there. But then I needed to make a real move and set up my own spot. So I bought his oven and mixer and moved it on a flatbed truck that I rented from like a regular tow truck company, and he strapped down.
Oh my God.
I have a picture of it, and pulling out of Grand Central Market with the oven totally open and mixer strapped down to the back of this flatbread. He pulls out onto, Hill Street, and makes a right to go towards where the bakery ended up being, the first bakery. Just runs right over the curb, and I'm behind him in my truck, and watch the whole oven that I just paid like $10,000 for, like leave the ground. It's on wheels, and then slam back down, and could have just completely gone over.
And you're screaming in your car.
And I was like, this is one of the many situations in growing the bakery where you're like, I just have to hack together something. I'm not going to pay insurance to get this oven covered if it falls off. We just got to like call a tow truck company and figure out how to do this. I just made it work and got it to this 270 square foot closet.
Is that where I met you? Was that
no? That's the second space.
Oh, that's the second space. Because that space was small.
That's 3 times the size of the space that I moved into in that same building. So I started in a closet that could just basically fit the oven, the mixer, one rack to take the bread out on, and a table, and it had a 3-comp sink in there, and that was it. And it's in one of these kitchens that is so awesome, where it's like a big warehouse that's converted into 19 private kitchens for upstart food businesses to kind of like pay relatively reduced rent and very short commitment to try and develop their product, and then they can maybe graduate to it's like a proof of concept,
a real space. Oh, what a cool! That's great.
It was awesome. And that was called Fishburne Kitchens in City Terrace. And we were there so I was in that space probably for 6 months until I was like, okay, we've got an employee or 2, we've got a driver or 2, and we're doing like a dozen accounts or something like that. And I can pay these people, and I can pay myself, and it's working. And I was still freelancing at that point, even at that point.
Wow.
Because it was paying me some money, but it wasn't paying enough for me to like cover my rent and stuff like that. But it was subsidizing my way of life, which was really insane to think that was possible, especially with just 12 accounts, which is still extraordinarily difficult. But then we moved into the space that we met at, which was 600 square feet in that same building.
That was 600 square feet.
It doesn't feel like because once there's stuff in there, there's nowhere to move. Like it's just filled.
But it was a cool spot. Like it was enough to like.
Yeah, we got stuff done in there. We at the end, I think I was in there for another year. And at the end, we were doing things that I was not comfortable with in terms of like spilling out into the hallway and like just really too many people in a small space, incredibly hot. The flour and all that stuff flying all over the place was lodged everywhere. And like, it's just the regular kitchen stuff where if your space isn't suited for your project, it just starts really falling apart, and there's mold that you have to combat, and like just constant stuff that's happening.
It's like a New York apartment.
It's just like a New York apartment. Nobody should live in this small an apartment. You're like, if you move one thing, the whole place is chaos. And it was chaos there at the end. So we went from, say, 12 accounts when we moved in there, and it was just sort of me. And right at that point, we transitioned from our first head baker, Kevin Morton, who's one of the best people in the world, and now owns Village Bread, which is out in Cali Mesa off the 10. Which, if anybody's from LA is driving to Palm Springs or anywhere out east, must stop at. It's incredible. And him and his wife Amanda are some of the best people in the world. We transitioned to Chris Lear, who's our current head baker, who is my friend from when I lived in Boston for moving to LA. He was a musician who owned a bike shop while I was working at an ad agency there, and we just became friends through music and mutual friends. And when I moved to LA, he went to pastry school for 2 years, and then moved here and immediately got a job at Mozza because he's a genius for his first job ever. And then was at Tasting Kitchen in Venice, where he became the head pastry chef there in a year and a half. And the timing just worked out really nicely that when Kevin was going to open his place, Chris was like done and ready to come work. So we've been working together ever since. And that was a huge thing. It's like,
That's
I'm working
great.
with my friend.
Yeah.
We can listen to jazz all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it was really made everything incredible.
And he knows
brilliant.
stuff from like real schools.
Yeah. I mean, he had about as much, professional experience at that point as I did, maybe an extra year on me.
Yeah.
But he was such a brilliant cook and a brilliant thinker about food.
Yeah.
That it immediately like wildly improved what we were doing. We had tons of creative opportunities to create our whole menu of products that we were making of breads. And we went from like doing, I don't know, ciabatta and maybe 3 different sourdough loaves to doing like a dozen different things like focaccia. And then we were making Barbary for the gals at Kismet and all this other unique things that we kind of put our brains to and made it really exciting.
That's so great.
That's
so
when it really
cool.
exploded.
Oh, to be with your friend, listening to the music that you love and doing that thing, that's like...
It was a really cool time for a very short period of time, and then it became insane.
Because it blew up.
It just went bonkers.
Right.
And when we were reaching the end of that time in that building, when I was like freaking out trying to find us somewhere to go, still with the intention of opening it as a sandwich shop with a bakery attached.
Yeah.
And like 5 different deals falling through at the last minute and like really kind of garbage people doing garbage things to us. And, right at the last minute, we had about 50 accounts.
Jeez.
We're like spilling out into the hallway every day. I kind of felt like it was getting to a dangerous point, and we had cut off accounts that had a wait list of another 50 accounts at that point. I found this space on Riverside Drive, kind of right on the border of Frogtown and Silver Lake. That was formerly Sweet Lady Jane's Bakery. They were like a cake company.
Yeah.
It smelled really sweet and gross in there when we first moved in. And found this 6,200 square foot space. So we went from 600 square feet to 6,200 square feet. It was 2 floors.
Right.
Had its own dedicated parking lot and all of this stuff.
That's where I came in. That's where I did that shoot for the Food Network thing.
Yep.
Right. That was a great space.
It still is our space, which I'm
so
extraordinarily thankful for it because it's just a really unique size for it's like a transitional size. You normally go from like a 1,200 square foot space to like a 25,000 square foot space or whatever. If that's the traditional kind of course for a bakery's growth.
Yeah.
But 6,200 is really unique, and we only needed about 15% of that out of the gates. And rented out the downstairs, and we're really overwhelmed by how large it was, but it worked. It was like we just had to hustle to add on some of those accounts so we could cover our rent, and we did that pretty quickly. But it just, once we were in there and the walls had opened up, it just really kind of went, like that was the hardest, other than COVID, that was the hardest time I've ever had, because when you're growing constantly, there's no like, it's not step up. It's just straight shot vertical.
Right.
You're the whole thing with bakery stuff is like developing systems. It's the same thing for like, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, the only way you can improve is to just modify your systems over time to do the same thing better or more efficiently.
Right.
But if you're constantly scaling up, there's no time to stop and be like, how do we improve this product that we're not happy with while we're scaling?
Right. Because you just got to catch up to the scale.
And there were times where we were just like getting pulled in both directions and trying to figure it out. And we always got there, but it was just so tough. And there were some people in the bakery that didn't work out of the gates when we were over there that made things really complicated. We haven't had that problem since, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's got to be hard, because that is such hard work.
It's hard because also I'm not a yes chef kind of person. Neither is Chris. We don't expect that kind of militaristic order in the bakery. It's more like we expect the people to come on board to share the same enthusiasm for what we're doing as we do.
Right.
And thus push themselves to do better every day and learn more and really take pride in what they're putting out.
Yeah, they're invested.
Yeah, if that's not their goal, if their goal is to be famous or get likes or look cool or any of that shit, then it's not going to work out. Like it's not going to work out for us.
Right.
Like that's just not, they'll be constantly pulling and it just won't ever work out.
You don't have time for that.
No.
You got to go get all this bread out of there.
Especially as like, as a sensitive, hypersensitive person.
Yeah.
When I can't get through to people, not in that I need them to be the way that I need them to be, but just in like if I can't communicate in a way where we understand each other, it just drives me crazy and I can't sleep. Like,
Right.
it's
No,
just,
of course.
it's
What
just
are they
something-
thinking? You don't need
Yeah.
all that stuff. Like,
Yeah, or what are they trying
upset?
to?
Are they?
Yeah, or are they trying to undercut my
Right.
authority or undercut my and doing it in a really tactical, gross way? Like those were things that we had to deal with kind of early on.
Yeah.
And once that changed and once that era was over,
Right.
it's just been like unbelievable.
Yeah.
We have the best human beings, which is why COVID was so intense, because I feel extraordinary responsibility for these people's lives. They've given themselves in a way to me and my idea.
How much of a reduction
In
during
sales?
COVID? Yeah.
So it was like the second week of March or something like that. The NBA shutting down and Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
That was
yeah.
it seemed to be the week.
Yeah. That March 11th when Woody got it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the that's Jesus.
That's
zero.
the benchmark, right?
That week, we went kind of from 140 restaurants across town to 40 in like 5 days.
Wow.
And that 40 accounts with also all reduced. So it's more like we went from 140 accounts and their, coordinating revenue that they generated to like, 25% of what we were doing.
Wow.
Which obviously has repercussions across the board.
Sure.
And we all had to just sit there and like sit in a room and figure out what to do.
Right.
Do we shut down? Do we keep going? What's the right thing to do? What's the ethical thing to do? Like all of that, those conversations were really fucking intense.
Yeah.
And the only reason why we survived is because the people, my managers, the people who make the decisions with me are brilliant and empathetic and dug in and gave everything that they had to, figuring out how to be safe while also taking care of all of our people.
Yeah.
Because food people are wildly underpaid for their efforts. And unfortunately, there are very few options for how to rectify that.
Yeah.
Just paying your staff more, which I think is a lot of the kind of gut reactions you see from people on Instagram or in articles or whatever, means that your prices have to go up. There's no, unless you're like a corporate company and the CEO is making $250K a year and you should really make a third of that. Then that's something we change. But if everyone's being paid fairly in the management sphere, or ethically in the management sphere, then even if you're paying people well for a food role, which is like somewhere between 16 and 18 an hour, that's not going to work if you cut their hours to 30% of that. They're not going to be able to live.
Jeez, yeah.
And of course, there was no movement with the government in towards of support for those types of folks, and there still really hasn't been. Other than unemployment, which we kind
I saw you had posted it at one point. Some explaining that. That was the first time I had actually wrapped my head around that.
Oh, it was extremely difficult. And remains extremely difficult.
Where are you at now? How many of the accounts are back?
So now, we had an outbreak, so we kind of went back up a bit over the course of like say 2 months of like March, April, beginning of May. And then in June we had an outbreak.
Someone got sick?
Someone got sick, and then in the end 9 people got sick.
Whoa! Out of how many?
Out of 43.
Wow. You 43?
Yeah. Wow. Some of those are drivers which don't really interact with the bakery. Once this all started, the drivers just stay outside, and, but it was the same. The outbreak happened the same week that the protests started happening, and Garcetti opened the city.
Right.
So I think one spilled into the other, and affected a couple, I think, of our bakers at the same time, and then that's what's sort of spread it around. Some of it didn't make any sense. Some of it was like not connected. So there must have just been like a crashing wave over all of Los Angeles that kind of caught
it felt
a bunch
like
of it. It did.
We're still digging out of it now.
100%. Yeah. So
you shut down?
So we shut down immediately. And then had to figure out what to do. The tricky part too was that during our off hours, so we kind of close at 3 p.m. every day. We're like 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. We were doing our bakery expansion construction because after that growth that we were talking about, needed to make it so that we could use the downstairs. Which is like another 2,500 square feet of totally usable space, but it's separated by a staircase that needs to you've got thousands of pounds of dough that needs to move. So we had to put in an elevator and really work on the floor downstairs to make it functional and move all the mixers down there.
Right.
And it was just not moving at a good clip because we were in the space.
Right.
Normally you would do all that stuff while you're closed and you open back up. So we decided while we were down, we could have opened back up in like 3 weeks or something like that. We stayed closed for 6 weeks. And we had some people who were really sick and most people who were not. But we also just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay before we were like, let's go make some money and some bread. It's like, no, that's the least of our concerns.
It's hard.
Oh, it was so hard. And
so you stayed closed and fixed it up down there?
Yeah. So we stayed closed and we're just like, okay, everybody, we bombed the place with, a sanitizing solution, which doesn't really do anything, but was sort of something that we just needed to do, even if it's just for optics. And then just got the workers in there and just banged it out. And that involved inspections and all sorts of crap that delayed it for way longer. Initially, we were like 4 weeks. We can get this done. It'll be great. But then there was problems and always. But once we were passed and through, then we opened back up. Well, we were going to open back up at 5 weeks, and then it was like right when things were peaking, and I was like, these people just suffered so much. I'm not going to bring them back. When it's worse than when we got our outbreak. It just didn't make any sense. So we stayed closed for another 2 weeks after that. I had already made the announcement to all our accounts, like, send us your orders, we're going to gear back up, and then had to cancel it like 2 days prior, which is not a good thing. But such are the times. And then we opened back up with like 35 accounts. We did so many different iterations of crafty scheduling and maneuvering to try and make this right and safe. And now, our new head baker, Jess Abel, helped, I basically said, if we're going to open back up, we need to figure out a way that we can continue going if we have another positive. Not for the business, but so that the business can be providing jobs for all these people on the other side of COVID. If we disappear, this whole thing doesn't work.
No, you got to think of that.
And that was something that was, told to me by my neighbor, Peter, who owns Coco's Variety, which is a little bike shop that's really fantastic, and he's one of the best people I've ever met and has been kind of my pillar of support during this whole thing. He's been going through it too. So we decided to do this thing called cohort groups, where now that we have 2 floors, we have the luxury of being able to separate people all day. So we would basically have 4 teams, divide the whole bakery into 4 teams that never physically interact with each other. And it requires walkie-talkies and a lot of careful stuff. And
that's how TV's working now. It's like all these departments have to be separated, and you're not going to interact.
It's the only way to go.
There's no walking across and asking the makeup people for this or
it was just impossible. But it just like figured out how to make it work. We had to hire some new people, which is weird because everybody's working part-time, and then they get compensated a little bit more now from unemployment. But prior, they were doing the $600 boost, so they were getting a good wage, close to what they were making. While only working part-time, which was key. And then now, of course, the PUA, the $600 bonus payments are gone. So it's gnarly.
Are you back to full steam? I mean, not full.
No, I'd say we've got like 75 to 80 accounts now, but they're all, I'd say it's somewhere more like equates to what 50 accounts would have been full steam. But we're okay. We're covering payroll.
That's good.
The problem is with a bakery, when I sell my bread to a restaurant, they don't have to pay me right then. They pay me within 30 days. So we were closed for 6 weeks. So 0 income for that time. And then when we open, we don't get any of that money for 30 days if they pay on time. God,
and most don't.
I'm sure. No, some don't. Most do. Most are really appreciative and thankful and all that stuff, and some are horrible, and we just have to keep working with them. But it's like life, It's just you've got to just
the more that are involved.
Most are fantastic and supportive.
Wow. So if you were able to survive that, I mean, it just feels like it feels like we're kind of making the steps back towards places being able to open. They're getting more creative with being able to serve people now. And I suppose and being in LA, like I'm more fearful for places that are cold. and that aren't going to be able to feed their people if it keeps going.
Yeah.
But we can still be outside. Like these restaurants are getting very crafty.
Yeah, it's very real. I mean, New York is just like, they're further ahead in terms of the virus.
Yeah, but
winter is a real thing.
Soon.
Outside seating doesn't work in like through 2 months.
No, I know.
So it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully they can continue to hold tight and keep the virus at bay, and then maybe that'll be okay. For us, I'm just hoping that the morons don't screw it up for us.
Right, exactly. Just keep it.
Just keep it. Yeah. Keep it at bay, or keep it moving in the right direction, and we can keep, moving in the right direction. It's just
whenever I tell people. And first of all, congratulations, and really, I mean seriously,
because that's that in because 4 months.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to jinx anything, but I mean that's so. Watching you, adoring all of it, and knowing that you guys were still going was like, these places mean a lot to me, and like you're a good friend, and it's just great to be able to survive, because we know we're going to lose some people that we really.
It's happening. It's going to continue happening. I mean, like really notable, long-standing, fantastic restaurants are closing, and every restaurant, people who aren't in the restaurant business, it's very easy to look at a place. I don't know, Beverly Soon Tofu just closed, which is a really fantastic place that's existed for 35 years. And to some people on the outside, when you see a restaurant closing after this experience, they're like, they didn't save any money. Like, it's like, yeah, they did. Do you understand how narrow the margins are to run a restaurant? It's so impossible.
I remember in New York, like doing just at comedy clubs, if there was a snowy weekend,
you're on the edge.
They were on the edge.
Yeah,
one weekend.
It's real. Yeah. And you got to do a promotion to get more people. And that's how the restaurant life is. Every day.
I know. It really is. And it's amazing how much we depended on it also.
Oh, yeah.
For our food. It became, this is, that's not the way people lived for a long time. Sure. People cooked and did all their own stuff. And I was like, no, we really, whenever I tell people about you, and I throw in, they do bread for like most of the places in LA that you eat is getting the bread from Bub and Grandma's and mozza. And they're like, what? A mozza.
Oh yeah.
Right, because Nancy,
she's La Brea,
La Brea, and so iconic for bread, and that you guys supply for that. That always is like, whoa.
I mean, that was top 5 most insane things that have happened to us. Was just like that email, come
out of the blue, or had you known them?
No, I think what happened was that Chris, who worked there, had met up with an old friend who was still a pastry chef there, gave them a loaf or two, and they brought that bread into Mozza to try. And for just luck that Nancy was there, tried it, was like, wow, this is way better than what we're getting from the now mechanized, massive international La Brea.
Right.
And that was the transition.
Wow.
And now it's like a much deeper, involved relationship with tons of different breads and things that we've built for them, and pizza dough and all sorts of stuff.
Oh man.
But that was a pretty wacky.
That's a big
one.
Yeah, that's a big
really
one.
Thankful for it.
Yeah, that's like all of a sudden,
it's like, oh, we're real.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like we're providing we can't get any bigger.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Why can't I make good focaccia? It should be so easy.
You can.
I keep screwing
What's
it up.
happening?
I don't know.
What's it look like at the end?
It's flat and hard.
Doesn't have bubbles?
I stick my fingers in it.
Yeah, but it does it like when you put
it doesn't air up.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Yeast or sourdough?
Yeast.
Yeah.
No, sourdough. Sourdough. Yeah.
Your starter's probably not ready to roll.
Yeah, maybe.
Send me your process and we'll go over it.
All right.
But that sounds like that's what typically with sourdough stuff. It's you're not getting enough activity.
Right.
Either that. I mean, how long are you leaving it after you dimple? How long are you leaving it out to proof?
After, like another hour.
Yeah. I mean, you could go 2. Sometimes we go 2.5.
Really?
Yeah. It just depends on the day. Really.
Yeah.
But usually we give it 2 hours. Yeah. It just sits next to the oven in like a covered rack, so it doesn't crust over the top,
right?
And just stays warm and develops. And the thing about focaccia is like chances are, if that's your experience, it's under, it's not over.
Right.
Over will just be a bubble festival and like just big open cavities and that kind of bread. So just keep pushing it, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Are you using yeast to eat? Oh, you said sourdough. Never mind.
No, sourdough.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
But yeah, the time on that, you can just let it go with focaccia because it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's not like it's gonna
It should
blossom
be
up massive.
No,
but
I mean, I'm making pretty good breads.
do
and
you feed your starter that day?
I usually feed it the night before, and then in the morning.
In the morning.
Feed
and
it
then
again.
How often after you feed it again are you mixing it in?
Once.
No. Sorry, not how often. How long after you feed it in the morning are you mixing it into the dough?
Like probably 3-4 hours.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine.
It should be okay.
You're temping it. It's like 80.
Yeah, I do the float test.
Yeah,
seems
float
like
test kind of sucks.
I don't really. What's that?
Float test kind of sucks. Though.
It does kind of suck.
It doesn't always work.
I know, but
I wish that it did.
But I wasn't getting a lot of rise. Like all of a sudden, after doing it for years, things weren't going that great, and I was like, let me just try this test, and it was like, oh yeah, it actually kind of recalibrated. I was
so weird.
I was rushing things and
this is why
not
bread
being
is
so
fun,
active
because it's problematic. Like
yes,
it's like if you just. I mean, most people are like, oh, I'm going to look up a recipe.
Right.
And I'm going to cook something.
Right.
And if it's reasonably like what the picture looked like, success.
Yeah, exactly.
Bread is not like that.
It's not.
It's not like that at all. And it requires like 100 times of doing it for you to get it right once. You can get it to be edible.
Right.
It's always edible.
It's always
which
edible.
is really great about it. It can be a total pancake.
Yeah.
You cut it up with a little cheese or butter and you're like, oh,
this is pretty good.
This is so good. But if you want it to look like what you imagine in your head when you pull the thing off, it just takes reps.
Yeah.
And that's the way that chefs look at cooking from recipes. You start with a recipe, you start with an idea, and you got to do it 1,000 times.
Yeah, you have to get really good at it. I mean, that's kind of it's a lot like stand-up that way.
Yeah.
And that like you repeat these jokes over and over and over again, but it takes that long. And there's always from the outside it might seem like you've just been working on that joke for a couple of years, but there's little subtleties that are changing it.
You learn. You have to.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly. I mean, I'm sure that's why you love comedy and bread. It's like it makes total sense. It's just about. Nuance and learning and
getting your ass kicked.
Yeah, and just fucking failing constantly. Yeah.
And this one, I hate to even bring it up, but the baguette at home.
Yep.
Lost cause.
It depends.
Close to a lost cause.
If you want it to look, I'm not complimenting my own work, but this is because we have a steam injection.
Right.
It needs a lot of steam.
A lot of steam.
And it's always just going to, even if you get steam in there, it's still going to be dry shortly thereafter.
They come out. They come out more like ciabatta. Actually, they
like
kind
a little bit flatter.
Yeah,
and I think that's standard. I think you could potentially get there, but. I don't know.
Flavor's not bad.
Yeah, as long as it tastes good. It's like you can cut a really thin thing in half and still make a sandwich on it.
Yeah.
You know? But I never got it.
You didn't?
No. I never got it right.
Yeah.
It would kind of look, it would just sort of be like a blank tube.
Right.
You know, like a blank flat tube that has no differentiation in color.
No. Right. It's pale.
It just didn't look good. It looked like
the taste is okay.
Yeah, it looked like an Olive Garden breadstick that was made in a machine, and it was like, this is not what I imagined. But shape, there's like technical things. Like, I don't know, did you ever take any SFBI classes or anything like that? That would be a good thing to do if you really were intent on like making the baguette work at home, because to build up that strength requires like some pretty just sort of specific shaping technique.
I know.
To get that tightness so that it really launches when it hits the heat. Upward. And there's like a 5-day intensive class up there with some really great instructors, and also they have all the professional equipment, so you can get some run on like the same oven that we have, and rack ovens and all sorts of stuff like that.
I was looking into like maybe doing some classes right before COVID.
Oh yeah,
and I was
not exactly at the time.
I'm not going to.
But SFBI
hang
is
out with some other bread nerds.
That's the spot.
Which one?
SFBI, San Francisco Baking Institute.
Oh, okay.
And they're up in San Francisco.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
that'd be a nice
good trip. And go and stop at all the bakeries.
Yeah, hang out with bread nerds.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty great.
They're the best sometimes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So the sandwich shop has been the quest from the beginning.
Yeah,
and
gonna do it.
And now
it was almost not gonna happen. In addition to like, all of the COVID shit. So all of that happened. I got Bell's palsy. Half my face stopped working in the middle of this stuff. There were a lot of emotional moments in the bakery.
Sure.
Things were breaking. People were breaking.
Yeah.
And then in April, So we were going to do this sandwich shop. It was in the news. We announced it. We got a space. We signed a lease, put a deposit down. We got investors all lined up in the fall, in November, in like 6 weeks. It was like quick, and we raised a bunch of money.
Wow.
And was like, wow, the people really want this. It's working.
Yeah.
Really exciting. And then April rolls around, and one of our investors who had committed early, and was sort of a friend of the Bubs world, dropped out. And that was 2/3 of the investment. So it was our biggest, monstrous $600,000 investor.
Whoa.
Which wouldn't have been that big a deal if it was November, but it was April. So no one's investing in anything at the moment.
Yeah.
So the last 4 months or so, April, May, June, July, like 4 months or so, not only have we been trying to revolutionize how we're doing the bakery to make it as safe as humanly possible and like grow the business back up after we closed, trying to like raise money during COVID, and potentially lose the whole, dream.
Yeah.
And had to, I was supposed to start paying rent at our space July 14th at our new space.
Whoa.
And that's $10,000 a month.
Whoa.
And luckily, in just conversing with our landlord, our new landlord, who's not even really our active landlord yet, he was completely reasonable and allowed us to push things back and give us a much longer runway, which was an incredibly kind gesture, especially when he's got mortgage payments to make. This is not like a big corporate landlord. This is just a guy.
Yeah.
And pushed everything back, and gave us a nice, softer, longer runway to take off, which is really, really... I'm very, very thankful for. And then I was just pounding the pavement to try and find somebody.
Yeah.
And little things were coming in here and there. And then we, like 2 weeks ago, I got it.
You did?
Yeah. So it was like...
that's great.
It was getting really dark.
Yeah.
It was getting really, really dark.
Yeah.
And combined with us... having an outbreak, which I never imagined would happen to us because we take things so seriously and care about our people so much, which was a real hit. Yeah. And then that happened right before the money going away happened right before. And it was just
problems.
Yeah, constantly. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's the whole job as it is for everybody, is just like, how do you manage problems?
Yeah. And now you're going to open the shop when?
Yes. So we are hoping to break ground in October 1st, ideally. And then it'll take probably 6 months to build this thing. I don't know, something like that. Okay. So I would say May, June is the hopeful...
That could be great. The vaccine will be out, and everybody will be eating out.
I hope
looking for stuff.
Oh my God!
It could be perfect timing.
Yeah, or we could be in the sped up end of existence. I mean, that could also
No way.
Tipped over the edge of collapse, and elections went nuts, and vaccines were withheld, and who the hell knows?
No. It's all going to work out. This is good timing. This is a good omen.
I think it is a good.
Yeah.
I feel like as soon as I got the call from the big investor who committed, I lost it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
My laptop almost fried out from just me pouring water on it from my eyes.
God.
It's just like it was just an incredible amount of pressure.
Isn't it funny how, like, I know you're joking, but like it's the end of times kind of considerations of problems, and then if everything goes great, vaccine comes, everyone's peaceful, we're making progress, everything's good, and you're just opening up a sandwich shop, you're just going to have all of these other problems that really are just as big as the end of times.
Oh yeah. I mean, at least at the end of times, if it really did end, I had no choice, and it just it comes to me. I'm in charge of all the problems at this place. I've got to figure out all the solutions for them. Luckily, in my case, I care about solving some of the problems. Unlike some other people in our world right now.
Do you have the sandwiches? Have you been
We've got some
around
things.
with them? You got some
we're
ideas?
about to. So Chris is in this interesting. Chris is going to come with me, and we're building him a pastry kitchen. So not only is it going to be a sandwich shop, and it's initially I was like, we'll put it in a 500 square foot old restaurant. It'll be a tiny little place with sandwiches, and we'll make some bread in the back. Now it's a 3,000 square foot sandwich shop. And we're building a pastry kitchen in the back where Chris can have free reign to do whatever he wants. Pies, cakes, croissants, all that stuff too. He'll have all the breads retail, and then we're going to have a full sandwich menu.
Man, oh man.
Yeah.
You're going to do the cool manufacturing thing where you can see through the glass at the people making
a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I can like stay away from tartine conversations, but it's gonna have a little window, for Chris's stuff. But it's more gonna be, I think, like, do you know Eisenberg's in New York City, like old sandwich shop?
No.
It's just like a classic old Jewish sandwich shop. You walk in, it's very narrow and long. On the left is a bar that goes all the way, like a low lunch counter and some seating in the back. It's kind of like the archetype that we're kind of following, the old New York coffee shop, diner, sandwich shop.
Oh, nice.
But at the same time, we'll have classic sandwiches like a perfected Italian and a BLT and things like New York lunch kind of things.
Right.
But then also some more progressive, like vegetable-based sandwiches. Nothing that's too like out there.
Yeah, you got to keep a little Jersey to it.
Yeah,
maybe a nice pork roll, egg and cheese.
Every morning we'll have fresh baked Kaiser rolls with egg and cheese.
Yeah,
it's not going to have dumb shit on it. It's just going to be egg and cheese. And I'm okay with it. I don't have to like win a James Beard Award for an egg and cheese. I just want an egg and cheese.
Yeah, but it's going to be good. Did you see Sam Sifton from the New York Times? Yeah. He was missing the egg and cheese at work, like going and getting from this little bodega. So he actually made it at home and wrapped it in tin foil and let it hold for a little bit.
So it melts.
Yeah, so you have that thing.
That is my favorite thing in the world. I mean, my fiance now is like, just constantly. I just eat extraordinarily like the highest number of eggs any human could possibly consume on a daily basis. It's just my affliction.
Yeah.
I have no problems with that affliction. I love it.
It's great.
But there's no, like, I go to Bell's Bagels and get a bagel, egg and cheese from them, which is really delicious, and I love those guys.
Yeah.
And actually they just moved across the street, which is awesome. I was their first customer on the first day in the new spot.
Oh, the best.
Couldn't have it any other way.
I gave them a shout out on Live From Here.
I saw. Yeah, they're so great.
Yeah.
That's my egg and cheese. But I do want it on a Kaiser roll. Briefly, they did do it on a Kaiser roll, but
a bagel's a little. Yeah, you want it a little softer.
Yeah, well, it's different. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a thing that I want sometimes, and then other times I want the Kaiser roll.
Yeah.
It's got the
Jersey.
Yeah. So we'll have an egg and cheese and a bacon egg and cheese and a sausage egg and cheese and like maybe a vegetable egg and cheese, like like some kind of green. But then we'll also have like a braised brisket sandwich that would be like my grandmother's braised brisket. And what else?
I thought your grandmothers weren't a food influence.
That it was like, made with canned, stuff and all. It was just something that was like there's one item that they're known for at one Jewish holiday from like, that's the thing. But yeah, like a pretty diverse menu. And then we'll also probably stay open in the evenings for a couple nights a week and do like, dinner, like we'll do just roast chickens and that's it, and have live jazz.
Great.
Which is just something that I really want and haven't found here. And Chris and I, that's like our main bonding thread.
Yeah.
That'd
be great.
It'd be so good to have.
Who are you listening to now, jazz-wise?
Oh, just all the same people that people have been listening to for
forever.
Yeah, I mean,
But you go through runs where all of a sudden, where you're like,
I'm a McCoy Tyner guy right now.
Oh yeah, I don't know. McCoy
he's
Tyner.
Awesome pianist player.
And
then Kenny Dorham, Miles and Coltrane, all
Oscar,
that stuff.
Oscar Peterson.
Yeah, Oscar Peterson. Love Oscar Peterson. He's great.
So good.
Ahmad Jamal.
I've been on a year run of Oscar Peterson.
I mean, it's just that music that you can set there.
I write to it all the time.
Oh, it's just there. Yeah, I mean, I used to listen to it while I was writing too.
Yeah.
Alice Coltrane, lots of more spacey stuff too. Sun Ra, like all of those things.
Mingus.
Mingus is great always. Yeah, I love those guys.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man! Well, congratulations!
Thanks,
I didn't know going into this that you had gotten the. Yeah, you got it.
It was.
It's a big deal.
It was a huge.
I was asking
relief.
around. I was sending out some emails.
It's just like there's plenty of people who would have normally been interested or who asked prior and were interested, but it's just I don't blame them. This is ridiculous time.
But that you pulled it off. I mean, not to get too hippy dippy about it all, but you found the thing that really turned you on for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And these things should happen in those scenarios.
Yeah. It's extraordinarily lucky.
Yeah. And you're not going to bring this bread home with you, right?
Of course not.
I should probably take it.
No, you must. I'm sure your freezer isn't full of your own bread.
I know.
Yeah, like this is the problem when you bake bread is you're just like, where do I put all the rest of my shit?
I know, exactly. Well, this was the best. Thank you for coming by.
For having me.
This is really cool.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll have to do another one from the shop.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah. All right, you're the best.
All right, man.